Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the all within the all, within the all, within the all of the quantum verse, within the energetic pocket and frequency of Gaia's ascension frequencies. Here I sit within the 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional, and 2-dimensional frequency in my physicality, in your physicality. And as you sit, observing me, deciphering whether or not my frequency is worth sitting around for much longer to perceive within your perception field, within all causes of the cause that you've decided to steep yourself into in this moment in time, whether it be in essence of freedom of speech, of freedom of feelings, of freedom of power, of freedom of choice, of the freedom that you have in this very moment in time within your energy body to listen, to speak, to breach into an energetic pocket of succumbing to the darkness that is within our frequency field. And if you've come across my video in this very important time in the humanitarian shift towards the darkness of what is, that will draw us essentially back into the brightness of what is, congratulations, as you've probably been seeking, searching, yearning for a meaning in this lifetime as to what it is within the wholeness that you've been able to succumb to in this very moment in time, to be able to land on this channel, to land in this frequency bubble of sorts, to land in the coherence within my seascape of frequencies, yada, yada, yada. And when I say yada, 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 I don't mean to bore you. I mean, when it comes to the shifting of frequencies, the yada, yada, yada within any frequency, regardless of whether or not it is where you sit or where I sit, serves a true deciphering of the meaning of all of the meanings that you could pull up, yank up, distort up into your reality field within the layer that you sit. No matter where you are in this frequency field of the 4D, 3D, 2D, and ascension fields that is heading up to the 5D, no matter where you are within these cobblestone roads of forgiveness found, and forgiveness never ever lost into a humanity field of darkness succumbing to the brightness of what is, just know that you were never not meant to come across this frequency in this moment in time. And if you've made it through to this much of my rambling, congratulations one more time, as you've probably been able to perceive my frequency as a familiar frequency at that. As my oversoul delivers messages of remembrance within your oversoul's scope of a blueprinted remembrance within a quantum verse that delivers all that you've ever shifted into and out of, into a bearing of frequencies that you're able to step into and out of within any moment in time, within a projection field that you've decided to land in within Gaia's field, within this moment in time, and all moments in time. As you are you and I am me, sitting so obviously in a separated state of consciousness, sitting so obviously in a separate state in physicality. Yet, as I speak to you from my energy pocket of what is, just know that the interlinkage of all that you can ever fathom to be true and untrue in this moment in time within reality field can never decipher what it is that Yeshua has set out to unify within a moment in time of distinction fields lost to the darkness of what is. You may find it a bit confusing as I'm bringing up Yeshua's name, Yeshua's being, Yeshua's field. And if you could close your eyes and tap into his field, would you dare? Would you effervescently need to, want to, succumb to the need to, want to, grasp onto the meaning of what it means to fractal off of a God's consciousness in a son's way, of a father's bearing, within a unity consciousness of what is to drop down into this distortional field. As the father of a son, of a father within a son, within a God scope of Yeshua's field, had never ever been able to decipher the interlinkage. That is not what it has never ever been. The unity of it all will slap you across the face so brightly, so distortionally, as you come into the realization that you are Yeshua through and through, that I am Yeshua through and through, that we are all children within the bosom of source consciousness, of a source consciousness so whole in its integrity of exploration, in wanting to and needing to feel into the state of separateness that drives us so much so at the end of each night, in the beginning of each morning, to awaken to our destiny, to awaken to our greatest deeds unfunded to be yet to be true. And as I mention Yeshua's name, I must, in significance, mention that in this moment in time, in my physicality, I've been recovering from a virus that our family picked up in a buffet line, touching a bunch of food utensils that seemingly have been touched by the whole entire resort. And as we stayed in this resort for a few days, almost a week, and ate in this resort, let's say 2 to 3 times a day, the chances are typically pretty much high for a family of 6, or that of 5, 4, or 3, even a singularity of a person, to be able to swap saliva, swap spit, swap germs in between outings and eatings and touching utensils in the buffet line. Though we wash our hands, we have children, and it's impossible to not share on a virus that's been wholeheartedly spreading throughout what seems like the entirety of Malaysia. Now, back in October, as I didn't quite know until later on, as I searched the internet, that some schools closed due to the flu, the influenza virus, spreading as fast as it did, to a point, to a perspective where the government here, the school system here, found it quite beneficial to shut down for, I guess, quite a few days. And it got me thinking a lot. It got me actually in bed, sick, with a headache, body chills, neck pain from resting too much. And there is such thing as momentary distortional fields within your body as you try to recuperate from a sickness that you're not used to embodying, and not being able to move so much during the recuperation process. Your muscles become stiff. And unbeknownst to me, that did happen to me, and I didn't realize until one day I woke up and I couldn't look to the left side without straining my body. So apologies for disappearing for a little while and not being able to make content, as I did lose my voice. And the reason why I'm touching base on this is that as we shift towards a higher dimensional frequency within our reality field, as we shift towards a higher dimensional frequency within the galactic verse, heading in a straight arrow direction towards the frequency of the angelic realm, as us light workers all begin to receive our activations to awaken to different perspectives, all the while sitting in our very own little physical bubbles, we will notice a distinction field between us and the person next door. We will notice a distinction field between us and the family member in the living room, we will notice a distinction field between us and that of the countrymen across the state. We will notice a distinction field on every single front, except for the physical front of what is. As your physical body is so much so grounded and rooted on Gaia's surface, along with all of the physical bodies of all of the people in which I've just touched base on. Viruses grow, viruses spread, viruses become implanted in a multitude of ways within a societal field, within a timeline trajectory of higher up frequency by the lower down elites to try to yank us back into a perception of turmoil. One by one, as we drop, like turkeys dropping to the ground during harvest time when there's nothing really to eat for them. Excuse the brevity of my language. It is that dire. It is that dire. And if you had not known, viruses can be manufactured in a facility. If it has not come into your conscious attention, viruses can be manufactured in a scientific lab by humans that are unbeknownst to their consciousness of what they're working on within these labs. Now, the dire effects of these viruses being released onto the humanitarian field, we saw the result of that during COVID-19. And unbeknownst to men in that moment in time, as we begin to see humans dropping like turkeys in a field that had just been harvested. For a very, very long time, children were in fear of going to school without a mask. Parents were in fear of allowing the elderly to go out in public by themselves. Restaurants were in fear of allowing patrons into their door, onto their doorsteps without a mask, in hand, on face, or whatever the case may be. Hospitals were in fear that they would become overcrowded and run out of oxygen tanks. Humanitarian field, our humanitarian field at large, had been fearful within this distortional field of unbeknownst to us that had been crafted by the elites, by the shadow government, to pull us and draw us into this place, into this pocket that unbeknownst to us would be known to us as the years pass by, as the months pass by, as the days pass by, as the suspicions begin to rise, as the scientists who've proven their dignity in the releasing of this information begin to fall, as the news anchors that begin to speak the wrong words begin to be fired, as celebrities who out themselves and out the elites begin to commit suicide, as targets start targeting the backs of the elites, of everyday people who've had a conscience enough to recognize something strange, to speak up within the propagandized system of our system, begin to fall one by one faster than that of the patients that fell from this virus, this disease that had been man-made, man-crafted, and spiritually cleansed to not contain that of an essence of the light within and without our consciousness at that. And I say within and without our consciousness as unbeknownst to the human beings that experimented on this virus in the beginning of time. As viruses shift, viruses become distorted, viruses grow, viruses manipulate itself into a growth pattern of spreading from body to body, from humanitarian field to humanitarian field. As it landed in its finality in the wrong hands, with the wrong judgment, with the wrong judgmental system, with the wrong agenda, with the right frequency within the wrong mindset, it had become weaponized at one point in time in perspective to deliver turmoil into our societal field. And turmoil, it did deliver for a large fraction of our childhood, of our adulthood, of our grownness, of our lifetimes. Had you been awake, alive, conscious during this moment in time that the COVID-19 vaccine had been delivered to a whole entire societal field upon Gaia's surface, you've been marked, ladies and gentlemen, of a distortional field that you no longer belong in. You had been marked with the mark of the beast. And you may or may not come into a realization of what the meaning of this had always, never, ever, forever, ever shall be. But as you've come into a realization that the artificial intelligence system that had been released within this technological field into the coherence of our consciousness has begun to grow through the coherence of our consciousness, as we begin to rely our fingertips, our mind stems, our brain cells, our physicality into these systems built by the elites to alleviate the pain in our energy body, to need to or want to use the distinction field within our third eye perception of things. Just know that the vaccine that you've taken, this COVID-19 vaccine, though incoherent, are the side effects initially. Later on in time, it will begin to grow into something disturbing, into something ineffective, into something effectively ineffective. As a weaponized hazard can never be weaponized against God's people. And though they try, though they've seemingly existed enough to try and deliver these potent shots into our bodily systems, pregnant women, children, young adults, the older civilization, newborn babies, you name it. If you want to work, if you want to fly, if you want to jet, if you want to belong, you've got to take the shot. And if you don't, you're an outsider, you're outside of the box. You're a conspiracy theorist and you don't belong in society. Mind you, you might not even belong in a grocery store or a storefront or a mall at that. You might not even have the right to go to a restaurant to eat without a mask. Forget it. Without the shot, even more distortionally rare that you would be allowed into these establishments during this moment in time. And as I speak on the obscenity of this obscene scene that had been crafted by the elites, society moved on, society shuffled through, society lined up for these shots. The young, the old, the senile, the distortionally rare, the educated, especially the educated. The lingering of the frequency within the deception field that crafted these injection sites, these injection shots, these injection turmoil that has spread through our biological systems is far and in between a seascape of turmoil that I can never describe to be able to grow, that I can always forevermore describe as the artificial intelligence that will draw a massive portion of society into the relinquishing of their third eye chakra by free will. What can I say in this moment in time? As the mark of the beast can never be unmarked in a way that will allow you or I to come into an understanding that it has already transpired into our humanitarian fields at large. At best, I can say not to worry, to say the least, not to worry. I've gotten 2 shots. My husband and I both gave first shots to our first 3 children. And as we awakened into our destiny field, as we awakened into a civilization that had been so blinded, so muted, in a moment in time where the majority of our friends, of our family received more than 1 shot, more than 2 shots, more than 3 shots, a shot every season, a shot every flu season, a shot every year of a childhood, not just a COVID shot, but a conglomeration of other types of shots manipulated into our system on every single forefront of a shot that can be relinquished into the air, into the skies, that we gaze at, that we can never ever escape through the tunneling system of the air that we breathe, that we can never ever step forward or backwards from in our existence fields. In the food that we eat, in the farmer's hard work, in the farmer's strategic alliance that, unbeknownst to them, is lawfully abiding by the way they shall grow their crops, raise their herds of sheep, of cows, of beef, unbeknownst to them, poisoned prior to giving birth to another herd, of milk, unbeknownst to them, poisoned prior to even distributing into society at large, of air, poisoned prior to even being able to cycle through back into the cloud systems to rain back on us fresh water that can never ever be fresh in a moment in time when they've decided to spray the skies with relinquishing aspects within a humanitarian field of poisonous gases, acids, distortional fields at large can never be spoken of in this moment in time as to the encompassment of the meaning of the fluoride that they've added to our water since birth. Since generations back, we've been slowly poisoned to relinquish the rights to our third eye chakra that interconnects us into the all, into seeing, into knowing, into believing that God exists in us, that Yeshua exists in humanity field in a way that interlinks the unifying energy within this third eye chakra. Unbeknownst to you, unbeknownst to I, unbeknownst to the average person at bay, it's not okay. It's never been okay. And yet, God can never dictate what the meaning of okay or not okay can forevermore shatter into as we splatter our consciousness out into the quantum verse to experience reality field as a whole, within a creative field, within the all, of a reflective mirror, of the darkness within, of the brightness without, of the brightness within the darkness, without the within, the within, the without, the darkness of brightness, overshadowing, all-encompassing light, neutrality, darkness, within the conglomeration of the whole of what is. She'll never speak of or touch on the possibilities of what is okay and what is not okay in any moment in time. And as I sit here, struggling to breathe as I'm still recovering from this man-made flu virus released upon the Eastern Hemisphere here to slow us down and sink us into our beds just a little bit deeper, just a little bit steeper, to feel like crap, to feel distorted in a moment in time of a higher vibrational field, to keep us at home rather than out in the sun where we belong, to disallow children to go to school, to learn in turmoil as they become older and interlink themselves with the aspects of the all within our reality field. And as I struggle to speak, as I feel like I haven't been able to take a full breath in weeks, due to this lingering flu virus that I've caught, I would like to say to you that it's not as dire and as hopeless as humanity could and should and would make it out to be. It's not as dire and as hopeless as I've projected this frequency to be in the beginning of this video. But the stark contrast in where we lie as a humanity field and where we're headed and where we're being pulled back to within any moment in time can never be able to be fathomed by humanity in this very moment in time, as the tides and ebbs and flows of this wave can never decipher where you sit, where you stand, where you lie, where you yawn, where you become intimate, where you eat, where you breathe, where you be. The essence of being, what does that even mean? What can decipher how you are? What can take away the fruition of the nutritional system that we so forthcomingly aim to strive to feed our children each and every day, as we've worked damn hard to acquire this inventory within a monetary scope of things, to be able to even step into the grocery store to purchase poison food to feed our children with the best of intentions. All the while, the people, the entity, the energy running this distortional field is poisoning us with the worst of intentions against our free will. And when I speak on free will, I do not mean the free will to eat, the free will to breathe, the free will to be, the free will to love, the free will to die, to lie down on your bed and be deceased. I mean the artificial intelligence system within the free will scape and scope of your soul's blueprints that drives you into your destination, into your destiny, that defines the quantum verse and all that it's ever been, that had been granted to us as a humanitarian field, as a consciousness at bay, at whole, at large, to be able to proceed into a directional frequency of learning, of all-encompassing expansion, of all-encompassing retraction within our consciousness, of all-encompassing refraction within the deities that we've come up with within our societal field to belong in any specific way, form, or shape, of all-encompassing wholeness within the entirety of all, the aspect and the frequency of the free will that had been delivered within our reality field had been stunted by the darkness in this system of Gaia's system that had been granted the right to run this system for far too long. And as I speak today, as I touch base on the meaning of it all today, as I pull up my calendar because I've been sick for far too long, January 21st, 2026, time does really fly in the blink of an eye. We are almost into February. What is the meaning of it all? What is the meaning of it all, ladies and gentlemen? How have we made it to this point in a societal field, post-COVID, post-World War I, post-World War II, heading into a seascape of the familiarity of an energy field that washes over society every time we reach a projection point of brightness, of lightness, of airiness within our energy body, of wholesomeness, of understanding, what awakening, what remembering, what the alleviating factors are to have been granted the free will to utilize this third eye chakra that has been stunted quite sparingly against our free will. The unilateral humanitarian field that drives this decisionary scope of the word and the meaning of stunted can't decipher the depth of despair in this moment in time that humanity itself has been fractaled out of God's energy body to experience within the interlinkage of the darkness that has been granted access to our energy body, to alleviate itself out of its boredom, out of its turmoil, to never ever want to or need to ascend, to take from sovereign beings that in which does not belong to them, especially on an energetic perspective, shall not be unnoticed in the honorability of the honor system of Yeshua's honorable energy body that relinquishes into the all of a humanitarian field. Yet, to have noticed that Yeshua is even here to begin with. Ladies and gentlemen, as I sit in front of you today, I would like to declare to you that Yeshua is you. Yeshua is I. Yeshua is all. Yeshua fractaled out in a moment in time in representation of a whole entire humanity field that needed to ascend, that wanted to be free on a subconscious level of this distortional field in representation of the sacrificial lamb that had been relinquished into this deity of a representational field of hell in itself. I sit here, you sit here as a light worker. As if you've made it this far into my video, just know that chances are, most likely than not, you are a light worker. You are the type of light worker who is capable of holding angelic light in your light body. Chances are, most likely than not, you've been able to stumble upon memories of that in which you shall forever, never, ever not memorize in the memory of it all. You are you, and I am me, and Yeshua had always been an energy field all-encompassing of where we come from, all that we are as a whole of what is within this humanitarian field that we've decided to drop down into to recollect the relinquishing field that belongs to the all. As free will can never dictate what free will forever always dictate within a moment of time of dictation, within the mirroring system of the reflective scope of unity consciousness. What has been taken away from our societal field can never ever decipher the meaning of the objective, of the subjective objective within a quantifiable physics kind of way. Of the undeniable truth that you sit in, that I sit in, that we all sit in our very own energy bubble. Just know that sometimes you might not be able to see. Sometimes you might not even know. Sometimes you could not decipher to be able to know or see. That at times you could argue, shoot yourself in the foot, shoot yourself in the head energetically into insanity. Had you tried to figure all of this out in your physical, with your brain, where they want you, where they want the entirety of you, not directing your energy towards your third eye chakra, but back into your brain to process this information that has nowhere to go, but tipsy-turvy and upside down within the reflective system of what is, and that you can never make sense of as long as you are stuck in the brain scope and the brainscape of things. The undeniable jail cell that humanity has been sitting in within their own brain scope of things will begin to relinquish. On a night of all nights, on a morning of the brightest morning, within your consciousness that you could ever fathom to be true or real. Within the knowing that you've relinquished and given up that of the power that you hold for your third eye chakra to operate as it should have. As it should been, as it never ever could have ever been altered in a way that it had been had you not taken that COVID shot. But as you come into a memorization of the memories that you've come into, that you've stumbled upon within your heart chakra, ladies and gentlemen, just know that the source frequency within and without this quantum verse knows no limitations as to the miracles that it could perform on your third eye chakra. And to relinquish of this free will is an impossibility at that. They can try. They have surely tried. They have surely admitted themselves to be at fault for trying, as they can never ever run from the aspect of the self that delivers the karmic retribution, as far as they can run from the aspect of the self that delivers the brightness within the darkness, within the reflective system of what is within the free will scope that can never be relinquished from our energy body, from our sovereignty as a whole entirety of a nation, of a planet, of a Gaia, of a distortional field. And as I touch base on Gaia, she's the first victim of this story. If there ever was a victim, so gracious, so whole, in its entirety of what it had always been, a part of us, a part of you, a part of Yeshua, as victims can never escape the duality consciousness within an essence of a perpetrator and a victim. Yet within the neutrality aspect and field of it all, there's no such thing. Within the essence of the unity forces of it all, there's never been such thing as a victim. As we, unbeknownst to ourselves, place ourselves within this conversation scope of he said, she said, he did, she did, well deserved, well not deserved. What did she do to deserve that? What did he do to encompass that? The brightness and the darkness shall forevermore interlink, intertangle, and interlinguish itself back into itself in the mirroring systems of all-encompassing frightfulness within the ever-vescent brightness in which source encompasses within our heart chakra to be able to retract itself into wholeness by reactivating our third eye chakra. In the middle of the nights as you sleep, ladies and gentlemen, just know that your galactic family is frivolously working on you, working on your energy body, not just you light workers, but humanity as a whole. To interlink this energy, this galactic field over Gaia's field, is all that the sun has ever wanted, needed for us to experience in this lifetime. As our great central sun, Sol, has come to the end of the encompassment of its lifetime, and as it begins to relinquish into the darkness of what is, the brightness that it shall forever, ever not, never not be, parts and pieces of its consciousness have begun to fractal down into humanity's fields, starting early last year. Towards the end of last year, we saw huge chunks and portions within its rays, within the distortional field of what is, invert itself into the darkness of what is, to project out these EMF waves that shall forever interlinger into our atmosphere, to draw out the Galactic Federation's frequency in an inward scope of reflection, to be able to sit and frequent our humanitarian fields within the comfortability of these EMF waves, is all that they have ever yearned to do within a moment in time of the ascension frequencies of what is. Just know that our sun, our great central sun, is coming to the end of its lifespan. And as you sit a bit confused as to the messaging scope that I speak of, just know that every single light worker will be able to confirm this information that I speak closer to 2027 in projection. And as I sit at the end of January, making this projection into a field, into a pocket for you to discover when you do awaken to these frequencies, just know that by the end of 2026, into a frequency of the beginning of 2027, into a frequency of mid-October of 2027, we would have already shifted into a humanitarian field of an additional layer within this quantum verse at large, of a 5-dimensional frequency that would have already been sitting within a pocket of frequency within Gaia's field for 2 to 3 months by October. The distinguishment within the relinquishing autistic informationary scope that I speak of can never distinguish the reasoning of why these symptoms have been appearing in our humanitarian field throughout the decades, throughout the days, throughout the years, throughout the recent hours at that. And that is to say that this energetic pocket that will encompass October of 2027, leading up to the wholeness of a humanitarian field, well lived, well justified, well shifted, will call forth the majority of autistic individuals into their mission, into their grand scope of a great plan that God had never been able to decipher, to disclose to any light worker at that, up until this moment in time. As I could have never fathomed, this informationary scope being relinquished in this video at that. If you've suffered from the projection within the 3-dimensional frequency of being labeled autistic, if you've suffered from the projection within the 3-dimensional nary scope of being labeled retarded, if you've suffered from the projection within the 3-dimensional frequency of being labeled all that you have never ever not been, retarded, autistic, a little bit different, ADHD, multiple personality disorder, schizophrenia, whatever psychological disorder that they've labeled you with, there's a grand space for you, my friend, in the 5-dimensional frequency. As you, my friends, you that I speak of, that step outside of this box, that exist outside of this box of normalcy, that have tapped in to your interlinking lineage within a higher dimensional frequency of being able to travel your consciousness and bleed into feeling too much, being too much, attaching to too much, grounding too much, flying too much. Feeling into higher dimensional frequencies was what you were made to do. Being within the galactic verse of what is was what you had been crafted to be. And as we shift, as we would have already shifted by October of 2027, by 2 to 3 months in time, in Earth time, just know that there's a special projection field in the 5D for all of us that I describe, who are just a little bit different, whether or not they label you as suffering through spiritual psychosis or whatnot, as autistic or whatnot, ADHDer or whatnot, someone quite different, someone retarded or whatnot, where we're going, where you belong, where I belong as a consciousness as a whole, you are just as loved, you are just as accepted, you are just as whole as every single other sovereign being within the entirety of this quantum verse. You are loved, you are felt greatly, you are understood beyond capacity to understand what the understandment of all understanding can ever feel into in any moment in time of your livelihood, of your wakelyhood, of your dyinghood, of your existencehood. You will never ever feel misunderstood ever again as you step into the place of belonging within the 5-dimensional frequency that you've never ever not belonged to within a source consciousness of Yeshua's field. And as you sit, perhaps not pertaining to the understanding of this video, as you've been labeled as quite different and not being able to perhaps listen to or decipher or analyze or even come across the physicality of my content, just know that as we shift into this scope of belonging, that the understanding that the humanitarian field will feel towards you, that the knowing and yearning that humanity will feel towards wholeness and unity can never ever shift you out of the placement in which you've never ever left, out of the scope, out of the consciousness of Source's bosom to begin with. Ladies and gentlemen, the special place within the 5-dimensional frequency had always been you, had never ever not been you. And as I touch base on the delinquents within our society, I must not forget to mention that I will be back in another video scope, as it's been 45 minutes. And if you haven't noticed, a lot of my videos cut off before the 50-minute mark for a good reason that I will touch base on in another video. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of an all-encompassing quantum verse. I hope to see you back for another short or long deciphering of a message scope that Genesis ordained is able to put out there for the entirety of all to encompass. Once upon a time in a humanitarian field, of Gaia's field, of a unifying unity consciousness, which I'm looking forward to as we transition into October of 2027, which is soon to come.